Nico Steves here. This podcast is the first of a two-part story focused on Our Lady of the Sign. But first, segments from the audiobook version of The Very Fine Light. Chapter 1. I've seen times when my friends became my enemies, and my enemies became my friends. Randy Sparks spoke softly to the frightened cat clinging to the branch of an oak tree several stories above the ground. The sound of whining and scratching could be heard from the base of the tree below. I'll bet if that dog hadn't been looking up and barking, the sheriff would never have seen you up here. With that, Randy gently grabbed the soft underbelly of the cat with one hand and worked to extract her claws that were dug into the limb. Randy leaned over the edge of the fiberglass bucket he was standing on. "Hush down there!" The barking suddenly stopped, and the unleashed dog ran off. The cat relaxed her grip on the tree, and Randy pulled her to his chest, slowly lowering the articulated boom connected to his truck almost 20 feet below. "Does she have a collar?" the sheriff shouted up. "Yeah, it says Elvira." "Well, you just rescued the minister's cat." As they descended, Randy looked around. Leaves drifted to the ground on the late autumn morning, and he noted the wisps of condensation from his breath, now that the weather was turning colder, in Canalville, a rustic village located in the lake country of New York State. With the cat secured in the back of the sheriff's car, Randy now used the controls on the side of his truck to lift the gondola back into its cradle atop the truck. "Well, good job, Randy. Great that you happened to come by so early," the sheriff said. "I took the bucket truck home after work last night. Don't tell Mr. Mayor or his underling. They'd have me busted for misuse of government property," Randy said. "Don't worry, I won't. Best to let things fall through the cracks and unnoticed around here, Sheriff. Hey, Randy, talking about forgotten, I ran into the dad of that Army vet you plucked off the bridge last spring. Father said his son's back on his feet now." Randy gave a small smile. "Gotta run." Nico Steves here. I hope you enjoyed today's segments from the audiobook version of The Very Fine Light. But let's get on to part 2 for the podcast. In this installment, the year 1170 AD, after Christ's death, is inscribed on the wall in my timeline of the history of the Virgin Mary since she passed on from the world. And also, part number 1 here tells of an apparition of the Virgin Mary in a time of great duress for the peoples of the Novgorod Republic, which was a medieval Slavic state. The republic existed from the 12th to the 15th centuries AD. In 1170, an army that contained the 4 kingdoms of Russia was gathering off in the distance in a determined manner to capture this city. The city at the time was a key merchant trade center. It was a focal point to the ancient German and Greek and Baltic trade routes. A main part of its assets were highly valued pelts from a great variety of fur-bearing animals used for winter clothing and in great demand. The forces of these 4 united armies set out to attack the city and came to us through an oral telling of the struggle of events from the saga. And the story goes something like this. The people had learned about the great force gathering against them and were frightened. They started praying to the Father and to the Holy Virgin. They then built an earthen wall around the whole city in an effort to defend against the enemies they knew would be coming their way. On the second night, with the beginnings of a siege on the city, the bishop was in prayer at a holy image of Jesus, praying that the city be saved. To his surprise and somewhat taken aback, he heard a voice calling to him, "Go to the Church of the Transfiguration and take the icon the people call Our Lady and bring it to the wall and show it to your adversaries." The bishop believed the voice he heard to be the answer to his prayers and was sleepless all night long. The next morning, the bishop went and did just as he was instructed. This icon has two sides to it. The main side is a painting of the Virgin Mary with her hands held up in prayer, and the baby Jesus is within a circle on her chest, but the babe has an adult face of Jesus. The back side of the icon is a painting of the Madonna's parents, Joachim and Anna. The citizens of the city who gathered to fight were mild-mannered people, accustomed to working at trades and far from the professional soldiers at their gates. There was a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear among these citizens who were dreading the battle about to come their way, and they anticipated doom as they heard rumors that the warriors had already divided the landscape between themselves. In other words, this street belonged to the first conquering kingdom, that street would be given to the next, the third street to the third conquering kingdom, and a fourth street to the fourth, and on and on. In spite of their tender mental state and hopeless plight, they followed the bishop's request and put the wooden icon on a tall pole, as the icon had a support in its center for a pole to be placed into it. And they placed it on the defensive wall with the side of the Virgin Mary facing their enemies of the city outside the wall. At the 6th hour of the struggle, all the Russian regiments started to attack. Arrows fell down on the city like a rainstorm. Surely the citizens would soon be overwhelmed. The soldiers would soon be vaulting over the wall or breaching the gates. Then the front side of the icon with the Virgin Mary turned herself towards the city. The bishop noticed tears streaming down from the face of the Madonna on this wooden icon. How may it be from a dry wood, tears? These are not tears, but the Virgin Mary showers a token of her grace on us. Our Lady is praying to her Son and our God for our city, not to be forsaken to our adversaries. At that point, the Lord honored the intercessions of the Virgin Mary and became gracious towards the city due to her praying. The four kingdoms began to suffer from his might. Some soldiers went blind. This created confusion among the Russian ranks, and quickly turned to fear and trembling on their part that overtook the hearts and minds of the soldiers at large. Then the attack on the city became disjointed, and fights broke out between these once unified armed forces. Emboldened by the miraculous sign and encouraged by the stumbling of their enemies, the citizens of the city went into battle and were able to defeat the onslaught, capturing and taking many prisoners of war. This humble icon, which is now known as Our Lady of the Sign, whose origin is unknown, has been honored and cherished ever since that time for its miraculous deliverance of the city from the invasion. This is Nico Steves. I hope you enjoyed this installment. My book, The Very Fine Light, can be found using the title The Very Fine Light on Amazon.com. Please feel free to contact me at nicosteves.com. That's Nikos Steves, Steves.com. If you like this episode, and for more, share them with friends. This is Nico Steves. Thank you. See you next time.